You're muted.
You're right.
Yeah, what you're saying.
There are 0 people.
Yeah, well, we're ready to roll, so I'm going to call the order. Everybody's good to go? All right. Calling to order the Monday, April 20th, 2020 regular meeting of the 38th Council of the City of Berkeley. Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Blanchard.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Dean.
Here.
Councilmember Gavin.
Here.
Councilmember Hennon.
Here.
Councilmember Price.
Here.
Mayor Turbrack.
Here. Our first order of business this evening is the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Dean with support from Councilmember Gavin. Are there any changes or additions? Glancing at the screen and seeing none. Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll?
Blanchard.
Yes.
Dean.
Yes.
Gavin.
Yes.
Hennon.
Yes.
Price.
Yes.
Baker.
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. At this time, please stand or bow your heads for the invocation, and then we will remain standing for the pledge. With us today is Pastor Adam Groh.
Let's have a moment of silence for those who are suffering through this, and then I'll pray. God, we thank you for this opportunity to gather virtually to do the business of the city. Thank you for these council members and their families and the dedication that they have to Berkeley. We pray that you would give them great wisdom and discernment as they meet tonight to work to care for the citizens and businesses of our city, many of whom are struggling. This virus has shown us how our world is broken. In the same way, we are all broken and needing of saving faith. And so we pray for mercy and healing for those in our city who are suffering tonight with this virus. We pray for healing for them. We also pray for the families that have lost loved ones. Would you give them peace? And even in the news tonight, seeing that 5-year-old girl in Detroit, this is also heartbreaking. Yet while we were caught off guard from this virus a month or two ago, we know that you were not. So help us to do your will and to do what is right for the city of Berkeley. We pray for your continued protection for our public safety, our hospital workers, frontline workers, that they would be protected and know your presence with them every day. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we have done in the past with our virtual meetings, we will still continue with two separate times for public comments. We will now begin comments for items that are included on tonight's agenda. You may present your thoughts and issues that aren't things included that we will discuss tonight. Council members will not engage you in discussion, but if your concern needs to be addressed by a member of city staff or a department of the city, please email the clerk at the clerk's office, which is clerk@berkleymich.net, or call the clerk's office at 248-658-3310. If you would like to comment, please raise your hand or dial in at 1-312-626-6799. Again, that dial-in number is 1-312-626-6799. 6799. You will be recognized by either your name or number, and when you speak, please state your name and city of residence.
Mayor Turbrack, there is no public comment at this time, or at least I don't see any right now.
I'm going to wait just a few more seconds in case somebody's frantically dialing in right now. For that number again, it was 312-626-6799. Give another few seconds, and if we don't see anybody popping up, we will move on. Any action?
No, sir.
Okay. Seeing no public comments, we will move on. Again, you will have an opportunity to comment again at the end of tonight's meeting. Move on to our order of business. First up is our consent agenda. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read the items on tonight's consent agenda?
1, approval of the minutes. Matter of approving the minutes of the 38th City Council meeting on Tuesday, April 6, 2020. Number 2, warrant. Matter of approving warrant number 1349.
Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
Motion to approve. Support.
Motion made by Councilmember Blanchard with support from Councilmember Hennon. Are there any corrections or additions? Seeing no corrections or additions, Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on tonight's consent agenda?
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennon,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Blanchard,
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. Consent agenda has passed. We now move on to our regular agenda. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read item number 1 on tonight's regular agenda?
Motion number M1720. Matter of approving a motion to allow the city manager to execute an agreement with Carlisle Wortman Associates, Inc. to perform the 5-year recreation master plan at a cost not to exceed $17,050. Funds for this expenditure will come from account 614-105-818-000.
Is there a motion to approve M1720?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion to approve by Mayor Pro Tem Dean with support from Councilmember Gavin. Mr. Baumgarten, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening all. We're joined this evening by Parks and Recreation Director Teresa McCarlton, as well as Chris Nordstrom of Carlisle Wortman, in order to present to you this topic. In your packet, there is a memo that was written by Ms. McCarlton, as well as the results of the bids. Those full bid responses were shared with council separately, but your packet does include the response from Carlisle Wortman. And they are already working with us on our community-wide master plan. And so for a number of different reasons, it made sense to bring them on and recommend to you guys that they also work with us on crafting the departmental response as well.
Thank you, Mr. Baumgarten. And with us tonight, we have our director, Ms. McCarlton, and as you mentioned, Chris Nordstrom from Carlisle. Ms. McCarlton.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. As the city manager said, there's a number of reasons that I laid out in the memorandum to City Council, and I'll just walk through that a little bit so anybody watching the meeting can know that as well, of why we're awarding this bid to Carlisle Wortman. The first was that they were the lowest bidder, which is always a good thing and a positive thing. Secondly, that they are working with the city right now to do the full master plan, so there's a lot of connection and synergy there with doing the city's full master plan and our Parks and Recreation plan. Third reason being they have great references from neighboring cities. They recently did a plan with Huntington Woods. I spoke with their director of Parks and Recreation, and she had all good things to say about her working relationship with Chris and Carlisle Wortman, other neighboring communities as well. Another factor is the fact that they work closely with HRC as our city engineers. There's a lot of background and knowledge that they have there, and having, again, that connection, I think, is a bonus. And then lastly, Chris and I worked closely together on the 5-year plan in 2015. We, for many reasons, were on a very tight timetable, and they were able to finish a product that we were really happy with, and that helped to lead us into the last 5 years, where we are now. There's been a lot of changes since that plan was done in recreation, particularly. Certainly, grant funding that we've recently been approved for in developing a park, the arena coming down, community center bond that did not pass. A lot of things have happened in recreation, including in staffing and in our administration. At the time we did this plan 5 years ago, our staff looked a little different, and also our form and function did as well with the arena. So where we are now, as opposed to then, I think it's really important to do these plans, not only so that we're continuing to be eligible for state grant funding, but also it sets the direction and it sets a framework for what we're doing in the city in recreation over the next 5 years. It helps us in terms of capital planning, and really planning for the future. Of course, there's concern at this point. A lot of what goes into these plans is needing participation and community participation, stakeholders, community groups, and we want to hear from residents. Chris and I have spoken at length about ways to get the most participation possible. Chris is going to speak a little bit more on that, but I feel really confident in the way that they're working already with the city to get as much participation as possible. And I also know that the last time we did this plan, a lot of the online responses that we got were really useful in moving forward. One thing that I also want to mention is that at this point, we cannot have in-person meetings, community group meetings, but there is an opportunity to do that in the fall if at that point those restrictions are lifted. We can work within the timetable that Carlisle Wortman has set, and even if we're bringing the plan to council in November or December, looking at the timetable that's in their packet, we could always hold a meeting in October, November if that's allowed. Again, I think it's really important. I think that Carlisle Wortman does a great job with these plans, and I'm excited to sort of look at the continuation of where we were 5 years ago and where we are now, and really sink our teeth into it.
Well, Chris, thank you for being with us this evening. What would you like to, or do you have anything that you'd like to add or address with us?
Well, I just want to echo what Teresa said about the public participation aspect of this. It is going to be interesting this time through. We're faced with a world that none of us have ever experienced before. And I can say that we at Carlisle have been actively looking at ways to be sure we can involve the public in all of our plans, including in Berkeley right now with the comprehensive plan. I know that Megan Masson-Minnock, who's been working with you pretty closely, has been pretty successful with using Zoom meetings or other forms of outreach to get the input that we need to make sure that we are really reflecting what the community wants to see put forward. As Teresa said, we have a pretty generous amount of time to work with here. The last time I think we did it in 2 months, something like that, which
2.5, 3 months. Yeah.
We don't want to try for that again. But certainly we can get started on the plan as it is now. Work with the steering committee to pull together the bones of the plan, and then we'll be putting out an online survey. And reaching out to different groups, especially seniors who might not be as comfortable working with an electronic format. We just make sure that we have hard copies available that we can either mail to them or have it available in some location where they can easily pick it up. Reach out to different sporting groups, to church groups, and so on and so forth. And these are things that we can work on over the next month or so. Make the plan, the survey available, get input that way, and then I think we can either do a virtual meeting. Actually, I shouldn't say either. We can do a virtual meeting, and then if it's possible, we have an in-person meeting later on in the fall. I had mentioned to Teresa earlier today that I think even if we push it up to November, let's say early November, that would give me time to make adjustments to the plan based on any input that we would get from a late stage public meeting, and still definitely meet the timeline that we put forward in the proposal. So if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to take them now and do my best to answer them.
Well, thank you, Chris. We'll get to that in just a second. I want to thank both of you, obviously, for the forethought that has gone into master planning process that is certainly going to be, at least initially, unlike any that we've ever been able to experience in the past, just by virtue of how we're going to be communicating right now. So I was very pleased that just to know that obviously this is something that you've taken into consideration, and we have alternate plans in place, because you have to engage the residents in any master planning process, whether it's the overall master plan, recreation master plan. We have to hear from our residents. So I'm confident that we will certainly still be able to interact with our residents. Questions for either our director or for Mr. Nordstrom? Mayor Pro Tem Dean.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like some clarification on what you mean by an online survey. Is that a link that will be mailed to residents? Is it Facebook engagement? I guess I'd just like a little more information on that, please.
Yeah, so the last time that we worked on the master plan with you, we did an online survey, which is exactly as you described. It's a link that would be made available on the city webpage. We can send the link out via social media. It's not something where you would be discussing it on social media. You would actually go in, and it would be a confidential survey where you put down your thoughts on a variety of topics, whether it be trail development, new community center, and so on and so forth. We're using a platform called Sogo Survey now. It's a little bit more robust than SurveyMonkey, which you might be familiar with.
Yes.
And it's a really good way. Frankly, we do online surveys for every plan that I work on, simply because it gives everyone an opportunity to respond at their leisure. The challenge being that you do have to make sure you do proper outreach so that everybody knows it's available. So I'll work with Teresa on that to figure out what the best way to do that is. I think if we put it on the city website, maybe put out an ad in the paper, if we can send out a mailer, what have you. We've got a lot of options now. The one benefit, if you want to call this a benefit of the virus and the pandemic right now, is that people are home and they've got time. So I think we're going to probably have a really good output this time through on that survey. And just so you're aware, the DNR does require 2 forms of public input. One of them is a required public hearing that is usually held either with the park board or the city council, and we'll determine what the best option is there. So then if we do a survey and a public meeting beyond that, we're above and beyond what's required by the DNR. So that's a long-winded answer for your.
No, and I do have one more part to that question. Is there a way that you know if the people responding to the survey are Berkeley residents?
We'll have a question on there that says, do you live in Berkeley or, the surrounding community? Honestly, I like to get input from other communities because using Huntington Woods as a reference point, you have members from other communities coming in and using your parks. Mm-hmm. This was especially true when you had the ice arena, and it may not be quite as noticeable this time through because the ice arena is gone, but right. Still, the community center, you're going to get some outside input. And while they aren't Berkeley residents, they are park users, and their input is really valuable. They can identify a lot of shortcomings or strengths of the park system as it stands.
I have one more question, please. You talk about focus groups, and have you determined how those participants will be selected, and if so, what method will that be?
I'll let you
yeah, so we haven't actually gotten to how we're going to do that. Chris and I, we're going to talk after tonight's meeting, starting tomorrow. But typically, when we look at setting the focus groups, we want to get people from different community groups, people from different backgrounds, different ages, and certainly we'll work with city administration, communication staff to set those focus groups. Also, probably talk to our city council liaison to the rec board and speak to the rec board. Get a lot of input, I think, is best on sort of how to set those. But I think identifying, people in different parts of the city, I think is really important to get as much feedback as possible and to really create a diverse focus or stakeholder group.
Thank you, both Chris and Teresa, very much for your answers.
Councilmember Price.
Thank you, Your Honor. Chris, you mentioned your survey platform being a bit more robust than SurveyMonkey. Could you speak about some of the features and or protections that your platform offers?
The primary feature is just the analysis tool. It lets me really burrow down into the data and do a little bit more in-depth analysis than I might have gotten with SurveyMonkey. Both platforms are actually quite strong and they are secure. So I'm very confident in them. But I just we switched over to Sogo Survey. It's been about a year now, and I've been really pleased with the capabilities of the platform. One thing that I should mention: we are not attempting to do a statistically significant survey. That's something that we did put out in the proposal to you. The challenge with the statistically significant survey, first off, it's much more expensive. It would have added another $10,000 to the project right off the top. Second, there's some concern on our end about how representative that really is. Are we really getting the voice of park users that we want? This open platform allows everyone to go in and respond to the questions and leave their feedback. And we will definitely have some an open-ended question at the end so that anybody can write down something that we might have missed on the survey. And I've found that you really get a good level of feedback by going that route. If we went statistically significant, I think they take, let's say, 600 people. I don't even think it's that much for a community the size of Berkeley. For the city of Troy, we had 700 responses the last time. So, I mean, in terms of sheer numbers, I think we'll get the levels that we're hoping to get, and we should get good feedback. Again, if we adequately advertise this to the public and make sure that they're aware that it's out there.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councilmember Gavin.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thanks for bringing this. I have just a couple of comments and then one question. This kind of dovetails a little bit more with a broader conversation about the overall master plan. I am happy to see that Carlisle Wortman is hopefully going to be chosen here because I do think it'll seamlessly meld together with the overall plan itself. That being said, and I've spoken with the city manager about this, and I know he's in discussions with his team and Carlisle Wortman for the overall master plan. But given the situation we are in, and with the limitations of collecting any in-person data on what residents want to see in that overall master plan from numerous city events that it's sort of been planning on having, I do think that we need to seriously look at doing a mass citywide survey mailed out hard copy to all residents. This could certainly supplement the online efforts that are talked about for both the overall master plan and the recreation plan as well. But certainly we have severe restrictions right now, and if the data, my concern is if not representative from the beginning, then we're certainly building the foundation. We're building a weak foundation, I would say. So, I'm personally willing to support spending a little bit more money to make sure that we're proceeding from the most comprehensive, true data that we can. So that was more of just a comment about the general master plan, but I know kind of it would hopefully be able to dovetail that along with the recreation plan as well. In terms of one more comment and then a question, I guess two questions actually. The first, Chris, could you talk about for the MDNR, could a public input session be virtual? Would that satisfy requirements?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the second question, or just maybe if you could elaborate a little bit, can we talk about how so we'd be able to weave sustainability efforts and green infrastructure being infused throughout the whole plan, especially as we continue to look for ways to mitigate stormwater runoff, encourage rain gardens, all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, so the survey, obviously, at this point, we haven't developed. And that's one of the things that I'll work with the steering committee and Teresa to make sure that we've got questions that are relevant to Parks and Recreation and certainly that meet the needs of the council. As a graduate of the University of Michigan's Landscape Architecture program, where we really focus on sustainability, it makes me happy to hear that that's something you're interested in. And I think that there's a lot of opportunities for park systems across the country to start utilizing more green technology. I think that is short answer again. Yes, absolutely. We can include just about anything that you want in there. I do want to be a little bit careful. I've had it happen in the past where these surveys start out with 20 questions and then a couple of people have a few more questions, then a few more, and the next thing we know, I'm getting responses saying survey's too long, I didn't finish it. But that being said, I think we can work that out so we can certainly accomplish the goals that we have of pure recreation versus bringing in sustainability as a component of that.
Great. Thank you very much, Chris and Teresa, and thank you, Your Honor.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. And I'd also like to agree to add my appreciation to both Ms. McCarlton and also Chris here with us today. I'm glad to see the energy building from the prior Parks and Rec plan. I thought that was a terrific document, and to see that continue really makes a lot of sense. I had a follow-up question to my colleague, Mr. Gavin, and then a concern of sorts, and I'm hoping somebody can help me with this concern. To the follow-up question or observation, in addition to sustainability and the green perspective of this, I'd certainly also like us to encourage how and in what ways we can leverage technology to make our parks smarter and more efficient. And I don't know that this needs to go onto a single all-encompassing survey of sorts, because in fact, a lot of the benefits from smart parks, so we've done a lot of research on that in my day job, a lot of the benefits to smart parks actually benefit those on the inside that are operating those parks in terms of knowing proper watering and maintenance schedules and occupancy rates and which equipment gets used the most and things like that. There's some really impressive tools out there that might help operate the parks better. If anything, a smart park should be that much more seamless to our residents, so they don't they just go there and show up and the trash cans are empty and the grass is the perfect length and those kinds of things. Smart parks can help with that, so I'm hoping that could at least be considered as part of the overall approach to our to maintaining our community's park infrastructure. So that was just a comment. My concern of sorts, I really do want to support this, and I'm hoping that perhaps our city manager could help me with this concern. I do like the fact I see synergies with having the same partner here with both the overall master plan and the Parks and Rec master plan. I definitely agree with that. But recently on the overall city's master plan, we've had several missteps, especially with our social media outreach. I'm not entirely sure if some of the survey questions that have gone out have been thoughtfully reviewed by folks within the city. And of course, some of the things that have needed to be rectified within the outreach. So, given that we're going with the same firm to do, a different kind of scope but the same general approach, I'm curious what can we learn from the past couple of weeks, the mistakes and errors and missteps, and apply that to this project that would help me feel more comfortable in supporting this particular endeavor. Any thoughts you can share with us, Mr. Baumgarten?
Well, certainly I'm sure Carlisle Wortman can speak to that more than I about how the current successes and challenges of Facebook has colored their path forward here. So in our previous one, what happened was basically what their process was that the comments on their open-ended poll questions became basically seeded the next day's poll. so we could talk to them about potentially not following that same exact route. But really, I mean, most of the content that was generated was the input of the residents themselves, which is exactly what we're after. But certainly, again, like I said, strategies, we can work on strategies, and it's always good to review and learn a couple lessons here and there.
Well, for sure, yeah. I think having the input from the residents, as has been described throughout this entire segment here, is paramount, right? I mean, it is their system that we're talking about, and so having every opportunity to get their input is crucial. And at the same time, having it being moderated and shaped in a way that leads to constructive progress, I think, is something that I'm really hoping we can get right this time. I'm willing to support this on a limb here. I do. I look forward to seeing how collectively we can overcome this and move forward in both insightful, informative, engaging, and constructive pathways going forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Hennon?
Yeah, so I want to elaborate on Councilmember Gavin and Baker's points. I like the idea of a citywide mailed out survey that we could be the master plan coupled with some questions with the Parks and Rec plan. But to Mr. Baker's point, I also want to make sure any survey that we send out, no matter the method that we send it out, is high quality, thoughtfully designed, because survey design is very difficult, and a bad survey may send us in a wrong direction more so than no survey at all. So I just want to make sure that we're very mindful of that in all of our survey efforts and doing that.
Thank you. Certainly, we, along with all of these conversations, we've also been discussing with the community center group that is currently on hiatus, a survey there as well, and spent quite a bit of time trying to make sure that the survey, as you mentioned, is actually giving us the information that we need and leading us in the right direction. So those are all very thoughtful comments. I'm sure Chris and Teresa will certainly take those into consideration throughout this process. Teresa, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to say that certainly, you know, Chris and I have a little bit of the benefit of seeing some of the issues that have come up, you know, and that's nothing we've done right at this point. Just seeing that, I think, can help us sort of maybe frame, you know, the outreach and that communication a little differently. Maybe you know, I don't want to speak before that happens, but I think, you know, it's always helpful to see how something works, take some of the good and also learn from some issues that have come up. So we'll certainly do that. You know, like I said, typically I wait to have those further conversations about how we're going to do that and really start structuring that until after council has approved something. So we haven't had those conversations yet. We've had conversations leading up to this meeting, but not about the actual the structure of how we're going to do that. And then I also just want to mention, you know, this is a living, breathing document. So it can change. There are amendments that can be made to it even after if council approves it at the end of this process. You know, and as things change, that can happen. And so I just want to, I think that helps to set my mind certainly at ease about establishing a plan like this, because sometimes you think, oh, it's done, and then it's just done. And you know, amendments can be made, and it can adjust. So I wanted to also share that as well.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions? All right, seeing none, again, thank you, Chris, for being here. Thank you, Mr. Carlton, for giving us additional insight and for clarifying some of the questions. Seeing nobody else, Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on M1720?
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennon?
Yes.
Price?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Dean?
Yes.
Turbrack?
Yes. 1720 has been approved. Again, thank you all for being here, and we now move on to item number 2 on tonight's agenda. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read item number 2?
Motion number M1820, matter of approving the cost participation agreement between the Board of Oakland County Road Commissioners and the City of Berkeley for the 12-mile road rehabilitation project between Greenfield and Coolidge. The estimated total project cost is $2,792,894, with Berkeley responsible for $180,212 from account 202-464-975-100.
Is there a motion to approve M1820?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion approved by Councilmember Blanchard with support from Councilmember Gavin. Mr. Baumgarten?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Building on our conversation from the last couple of months on the upcoming 12-mile reconstruction project that's going to be led by Oakland County Road Commission. What comes before council this evening is a cost-sharing agreement. We're joined by Tom Noshel from RCOC, as well as Derek Schuler, our Director of Public Works. In your packets, you'll see that Mr. Schuler has written a memo outlining sort of the scope of what's being discussed here. You'll see that there is an agreement which clearly spells out Berkeley's obligations in this scenario as this project progresses. And then also want to call attention to the exhibits, the last exhibit in the agreement, which is a breakdown of the tri-party funds, which moves through the local obligation, which includes both the county, City of Berkeley, and then outlines really the total amount that's being picked up by the federal Department of Transportation in the form of the highway administration here, which is about 80% of the total cost of this project.
Mr. Schuler, you're up.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. So before you tonight is the cost participation agreement. Tom from RCOC has joined us as well. Let me give a quick overview for those at home and those watching about the 12-mile project. It is a rehabilitation project on 12-mile road from Greenfield to Coolidge, which is scheduled to start construction later this spring. Again, this is a 1-mile stretch and it is county jurisdiction. This is a county road. In general, let me hit on the major improvements, which include a complete road reconstruction on 12 between Greenfield and Elwood. The rest of the stretch will receive milling and paving, 3 inches of new asphalt. There will be reconstruction on some of the side street approaches. We have curb and gutter going in miscellaneous locations. We'll also be addressing the ADA compliant pedestrian crosswalks, and there'll be new pavement markings as well as pedestrian signal upgrades. As mentioned, the total project costs are around $2.8 million, of which federal funding is covering just over $2 million. So as Matt alluded to, a significant portion of this job is receiving federal funding, which everyone is excited about. And the Berkeley's estimated share of the cost is going to be around $180,000. The start date, we don't have June 1st is the general start date for the project. They are anticipating construction to start in June. Once we get a firm date on that, we will certainly share it with everyone. And they are intending to have the majority of the work completed before the end of the 2020 calendar year. I do want to point out that RCOC has recently scheduled the pre-construction meeting for the first week in May. So that gives you an indication that things are moving forward, and we'll let Tom maybe comment about that in a minute as well. As it relates to traffic, I want to just hit on the real general traffic implications because I'm sure folks are curious. There will be a full road closure of 12-mile between Greenfield and Elwood when they work on the reconstruction piece of the project. Again, we don't know the specific time of that yet, but there will be a full road closure there with a detour posted. During the milling and overlaying, we will maintain two-way traffic on 12-mile on 2 lanes. So they'll be working on, the south side, the north side separately,
So we will have two-way traffic on 2 lanes when they're doing the asphalt paving work, which will be the majority of the road work. Again, we will have more specifics on the schedule as we have the pre-construction meeting and we get some of those meetings scheduled with both RCOC as well as the contractor. It was a very competitive bid from RCOC's end, and I'm happy to report that the low bid did come in under the engineer's estimate. I think all of us were curious bid results given COVID, but there were good numbers submitted, and that's always a positive sign. So before you tonight is really the cost agreement that RCOC has provided. It outlines all of the costs of the project. I've been working with Tom and RCOC to bring this to council. Sometimes RCOC brings this to council before a bid opening. I thought it was important to have the bid opening first so that we could really fine tune those numbers. Obviously during construction, anything can change, but this is the best information that we have available. So I wanted to bring it to council's attention. I think that's all I have from my end. Tom from RCOC, is there anything you want to share with the group?
You did a very nice job, Derek, of giving a really nice summary of this project. As Derek knows, I'll let everybody else know, Derek and I have been working on this, trying to capture the federal money for this project for many years, and it's finally here, so we are excited about it. The agreement itself is fairly self-explanatory. I'd be happy to answer any questions, but as Derek indicated, we're always excited about federal money coming into these projects because typically they cover anywhere from 80 or 82% of the costs. And we typically share that local match on the construction, the 20%, with the local community. So we're certainly thankful that Berkeley is participating in this project. And the use of the tri-party program is key. We always look to leverage our dollars as best we can in projects like this, particularly when we bring federal dollars in. This significantly reduces the city's share because instead of paying 100% of their $250,000 share for the actual road construction, they're bringing in a little over $169,000 of tri-party, which you're responsible for 1/3 of that. And the other 2/3 are covered by the Road Commission and Oakland County. There are some non-participating costs, the decorative stamped concrete. And this was based on the bid, it's about $43,000. And as Derek alluded to, we've been seeing bids so far this year be affected by COVID, labor shortages, equipment shortages, competitive bid on this project. In fact, this was the only project so far this year that has the bid has come in under engineer's estimate. So we're certainly grateful for that. So this is a project that's been a long time in coming. We did have a couple public meetings, one with the businesses only and one with the residents. Typically, Road Commission staff attends these meetings. It's not a formal presentation, but folks come in, we answer questions, address their concerns, and those meetings went very, very well. Start date, approximately June 1. I think that'll get a little bit more clear if there's a new date after the pre-construction meeting that Derek indicated is scheduled for the first or second week of May, I believe. That's when the contractor will come in, the consultant, Road Commission staff, and we'll tighten up schedule and maintenance of traffic and closures and whatnot. But this has been a long time in coming. We're excited about it. I hope you folks are too. And we, weather permitting and product, material, and equipment permitting, we hope to have this open to traffic by the end of the construction year, this calendar year 2020.
Well, thank you, Tom, for being with us this evening to provide a little additional clarity and context. And yes, this is something that we have been discussing for a number of years, hoping that it was finally going to receive funding that you mentioned from the federal level. You know, in the city's share $3 million, nearly $3 million reconstruction project. $180,000 is certainly something that is exciting to us as well, despite what we've already discussed in the short term problems that a road closure, road construction is going to have, including some fairly significant events that we do throughout the city. But again, that's a short-term cost for hopefully a much longer-term gain for our community and for the businesses and the residents and everybody who travels on 12 Mile. Additional questions for Tom or for Mr. Schuler? Councilmember Blanchard?
Thank you, Your Honor. My only concern, or a couple of my concerns, are the fact that with the businesses being greatly impacted by the COVID-19 virus, they're going to see another long stretch of probably low attendance of customers, but that's we all have to live with. The question I've got is, what is going to be the impact on the intersection of 12 Mile and Greenfield with the complete reconstruction? Are we going to tear that intersection up, or how much of that is going to be impacted by this construction?
I don't have the exact schedule of when that intersection is going to be rebuilt, but I'm sure you're familiar with it. There's about 500 or 600 feet west of the intersection is in poor shape. And we are going to be doing that with this project as well. So we're not leaving anything undone in this corridor. I wish I had a better answer for the intersection itself. We don't have an actual schedule, but we will try to minimize impact as best we can. Unfortunately, there are going to be some inconveniences and delays. We are sensitive to businesses and what's going on with COVID-19 and the overall reduction in folks shopping and spending money. And I know they're hurting already. But we have our inspectors and folks on site, and we try to work with them and accommodate them as best we can.
I appreciate that, because we're going to need the support of you people helping get people to the businesses by minimizing the disruption. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jack. Councilmember Price?
Yes, I'm not sure if this question is best for Tom or for the city manager, but I'm wondering if we have any financial protections if the restrictions from COVID-19 prevent construction from happening this summer.
So far, I'll take the first crack at that. So far, we haven't had any notice that our road projects had been affected as of yet. We're working closely with the Michigan Institute of Transportation Infrastructure, and all indications are, social distancing as best that the contractor can do, as long together with our inspectors. But the last I heard Friday is that it is all systems go unless COVID takes a turn after maybe some of the social distancing is kind of softened. If there's another uptick. But right now, this project is on schedule for a June 1 construction start, and we want to get it done by the end of this year. If the project were to be shut down for something beyond our control, we would definitely work with the city and with our Congress folks and whatnot, so we don't lose the federal money to maybe do this next year. But we certainly wouldn't expect payment from the city for a project that wouldn't be going. So we're pretty reasonable to work with, and we wouldn't force you to pay or ask you to pay something for a project that would be delayed or that maybe wouldn't happen until the following year or two. It's a very good question, because it's a gray area with COVID.
Right.
We haven't had any of our construction projects affected thus far.
All right. Thank you, though, for that reassurance. I appreciate it.
You're quite welcome.
Councilmember Baker?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor, and thank you to Derek and team for bringing this to us and to the great partnership that we have both at the city, county, state and federal levels to make very large projects like this happen. It's exciting to see this finally going. Those of us that have ever been on 12 Mile over the last couple years, 5 years, this is definitely needed. I presume, kind of following up on Councilmember Price's question, that a project once started wouldn't be abandoned, right? If they were to be halfway finished and then something strange or whatever, they just say, okay, that's it, and leave us hanging like that, right? So I'm presuming that once a project is underway, we'd find a way to complete it, or at least finish whatever was being worked on enough to maintain or to resume normal operations if they weren't able to complete the project. Is that a fair assumption? Again, I know we're in uncharted territory here, so obviously it's probably more of a hypothetical, but just kind of taking that earlier line of reasoning to maybe a bit too far. Is there any thoughts on projects that have kind of just dried up mid-flight?
Not that I'm aware of statewide. I know the conversation of the impact of COVID-19 on projects was to delay the start of them. But if they were a carryover project from 2019 into 2020, or if something is underway, I think all efforts would be made to finish that project. Because if you ask a contractor, or you tell a contractor to pull all their equipment or leave it there, and then they move it to another site, there's going to be issues, damages that contractor is going to be going after and whatnot. It wouldn't be the best scenario. So to answer your question, at least to what I know so far statewide, once a project is underway, they're not going to shut it down unless there is an unfortunate catastrophe of some sort in regards to public health.
Right. Thank you for that. And this might be too early to know the answer to this question, but we do, as stated in the proposal here, anticipate a full reconstruct right off of Greenfield. Do we happen to know if that's going to be done early in the project, meaning we're basically going to go from west to east, or could that be done randomly in the middle of the project, or will that be done towards the end of the project? Do we have any inclination, or at least a strategy coming into this as to where that portion of the overall work will be sequenced? Do we anticipate it being up front by chance?
At this time, I don't have a clear indication of when it will be done. Some of these scheduling issues will be worked out at the pre-con meeting, but we do give the contractor some flexibility to move within the project limits to determine what's to their advantage. Like a good stretch of weather, recon will take a little longer than a mill and overlay. They may do that early in the project. And depending how, with the availability of equipment, labor, and whatnot, what equipment they need to move in and move out and do the two different types of work that are in this project. I think some light will be shed on that subject at the pre-con, but it's really up to the contractor where they maneuver within the project limits. But if it's something that makes a lot of sense to do early or midpoint or late, we can certainly bring that attention to the contractor.
Excellent, thank you. And I certainly I don't intend to suggest any particular sequencing. My general line of rationale for that question was more broadly, how will this project communicate with the business owners and residents in the affected areas? And will it be like, as that plan gets firmed up, then you'll give the residents and businesses within a 2-block radius or wherever the next hotspot's going to be, you'll give them 2-week notice or something like that to say, hey, we're coming your way, or could you basically elaborate a little bit more on the specifics of how directly have impacted stakeholders, the businesses, the residents will receive, hey, we're in your neck of the woods, for the next 3 weeks or something like that. Anything you can add on the communication plan?
Sure. Typically, a few weeks before a project starts, we send out an information flyer to folks in the surrounding area, whether they're a residence or a business, and we give them a summary of the project, some assumed start dates, finish dates, and we also give them a schedule based on this pre-construction meeting or any other communication with the contractor when they can expect certain levels of construction to occur within a project limit. We also update our website almost daily. And also the construction inspectors, we've got a lot of good construction inspectors, both men and women, that communicate with folks within the project limits as to what's going to happen the next day, the next week, the next few weeks. So we've really worked a lot the last 5 to 10 years on improving our communication with folks, because we all know road construction is messy and things can pop up and people will say, well, you were just here yesterday. Why are you not here today? But you're down at the other end. We try to keep people informed the best we can. So direct mail, website, and our inspectors and our construction engineers are very approachable, of course, within 6 feet with the social distancing, of course. But so communication is key, and we're more than happy to engage in folks and keep them informed.
Great, thank you. Yep, I appreciate that, and as you know, especially as Councilmember Blanchard mentioned earlier, our downtown's really in a pinch right now. So whatever we can do to give extra attention, or at least a consideration to our businesses and our residents as this project unfolds, proceeds there. I think that'd be great. And again, I'm really excited about this. I'm happy that we find ourselves here, being able to move forward with a great partnership. And I want to thank you and Mr. Schuler and everyone involved for bringing this here for us tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Mayor, I do want to note too that in addition to the road commission, you would have seen our 12-mile businesses locally, our own communication staff, as well as the DDA staff, as well as the chamber staff, will be working to make sure that that message is well broadcasted, and that we're each interfacing with customers and stakeholders to make sure that they're all aware of where they can get good information and what the new developments are as they unfold.
Thank you. And of course, Tom, you certainly, our COC is very well versed in projects like this. You're certainly a professional organization. Even though we are dealing with some uncertain times right now, I'm confident that the road commission is going to take every precaution to make sure that they are communicating and not putting any added undue stress on our local businesses, given what we're currently dealing with.
Certainly.
Councilmember Hennon.
Yes, I want to preface my comments by saying I definitely think we should move forward with the general repairs, but to me, the financial impacts of the coronavirus are still very much in the air, and I think we need to closely look at cost savings where they're available. So my question is on two items that seem discretionary: the irrigation, but especially the stamped concrete. Are those items that are strictly necessary for us to do now? Are they something we could delay and do at a different time?
This is Tom Noshel. Are you asking me if it's a good time? I'm sorry.
I'm not sure who would be best suited to answer that question, but
I can check here a little bit, and then Tom, if you want to jump in.
Sure.
And there's a small portion of stamped concrete that we wanted to try to match up. So we decided, our COC approached us for some non-participating costs to try to, for lack of a better word, make sure that the stamped concrete is consistent. I certainly don't have a problem, if we want to, eliminate the stamped concrete. Tom, I suppose that's something we could even approach the contractor with to see if that's what cost savings would be there if instead of stamp that goes back in regular concrete. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm not, I don't know if I can't remember if I've ever been involved in going back to the contractor and ask them to remove something like this or change the quantity and the unit price that was included in the bid. I could certainly follow up. Anything is possible. I could certainly follow up with some of our construction folks. And of course, they would have to have conversations with the contractor. But I do recall those conversations we had early on about the consistency in the two sections of stamped concrete. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the unit price on the stamped concrete that was included in this bid was extremely attractive.
It may be a case, Councilman, too, that the difference between regular concrete and stamped is really either not much or a limited amount, and that's something we can take a look at as well. So obviously we have to put back concrete in those locations, but we can at least look at the cost differences per the bid.
Right. It seems that reading this, it seems like the price differential for us on the concrete would be about $43,000. I can get on board with the irrigation. I can understand putting irrigation in later is harder, but our current stamped concrete there is already in poor repair. It's chipped, and getting a color match is going to be impossible. So my inclination is, if the cost savings, if there can be cost savings had there to take advantage of it.
We can talk about that with the contractor. Do you agree?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. We can do that.
I think, though, you might need input from the rest of council, since I'm just one of 7 here.
Well, I think at this point, let's allow Mr. Schuler and Tom to ask those questions and possibly report back to council what you guys find. And if it is something obviously substantial, council certainly can amend and change their decision. Is that fair with everybody? Is everybody on board with us? I certainly don't want to belabor all the finer points of this agreement at this point, but there are some things that we certainly can take a closer look at. Fair?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any additional questions on 12 Mile? Seeing none, again, thank you, Tom, for being here, and Derek as well for entertaining and answering those questions related to this project. And Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on M1820?
Hendon,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Blanchard,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. We now move on to item number 3. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read that item?
Motion number M1920, matter of awarding the contract for the 2020-2021 citywide road improvement program to the lowest qualified bidder, Italia Construction, Inc. of Washington, Michigan, in an amount of $1,594,607.10. In addition, allocate $138,041.16 for construction engineering services to Hubble, Roth and Clark, and $159,460.71 for construction contingencies.
Is there a motion to approve M1920?
So moved.
Or
Motion made by Councilmember Hendon with support from Councilmember Blanchard. Mr. Baumgarten?
Thanks, Mayor. I think I should start first by thanking Berkeley voters. This project is directly funded by them. This was the fruits of the labor of supporting the infrastructure millage that was back in the 2018 ballots. And so what we see before you here now is the actual moving forward with getting a contractor to literally put our money into the ground. This is for the city. This is road repairs all over the city. Mr. Schuler's provided a memo outlining what the process that has been that brought us up to this point. The memo also includes a great map, just like when we talked about this with the engineering approvals. A great map showing little yellow dots spread throughout the entire city, what we're excited to put in action here. And then also the results that we had, those bids again were shared with the council in a separate document. But you'll see that Italia Construction was the lowest bidder here. As Derek, I'm sure will mention, we do check references, and despite their low bid, people have been extremely happy with the work that they've done so far, and we're looking forward to potentially working with them.
Mr. Schuler?
Thank you, Mayor. So we're going to be generating, or we have generated for the first year about 1.1 million, and we'll be generating that for each additional year. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on that with COVID, but the plan of attack for the first 2 years of the road or the infrastructure improvement millage is to do citywide road repairs. And as Matt alluded to, we've got literally hundreds of locations that we're going to be touching throughout the city of Berkeley, obviously all on city-owned streets. And how we got here was in part due to the HRC assistance with the Pazer road rankings that we performed, and then we revisited those spot locations over this past winter to gather more detailed information. We got photos, HRC gathered the bid items, and we put all of that together into a full bid spec that we put out on the street. And we had an opening on April 7th, and we didn't know what to expect. Obviously, fears of not many bidders and high unit prices were on our mind, but I'm happy to report that we received multiple bidders, 10 contractors, a competitive bid, and we received an attractive low bid from Italia Construction. HRC has reviewed all the bid tabs. They go through all the tabs. Eddie and Roland are with us today, and I'll turn it over to Eddie in a minute. But they did check references, and Italia Construction has done numerous projects in the area, and they come with a high recommendation. So we are recommending that low bid of approximately 1.5 million to Italia Construction. Again, I want to reiterate, this will be a 2-year term for the bid. We will do some of the work in 2020, and we will do the remainder of the work in 2021 with Italia Construction. Included also in the bid, we have the HRC Construction Engineering Services, which includes numerous components. HRC submitted the detailed proposal, which you could look at, as well as a spreadsheet breakdown with all of the pricing. We also, as we typically do, have the 10% contingency as well. As far as schedule goes, similar to our COC project, we don't exactly have a defined start date yet, but we will be working with the contractor with that. We do expect them to be starting up in the near future, but it does take a few weeks to get all the bid documents back, insurance, bonds, those sort of things. And they are expected to have a portion of the work done by November 2020. Again, HRC has communicated with the contractor. We have no reason to believe that they won't be able to perform the work. They have not had any layoffs. They are off work now. Italia is not working now, but they're looking forward to getting started very soon. And they have committed to us to completing the work. And again, as soon as we have more details on the start of construction, we will certainly share those with everyone. They'll start back up again in the spring of 2021 and wrap up work next year. And again, that will be for the first 2 years of our successful road millage. Eddie and Roland are here as well and can answer any questions as well as I can, so happy to entertain questions.
Eddie, Roland, anything to add that was not previously covered by Director Schuler?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. As usual, Dirk did a great job, covered pretty much everything. Just to elaborate a little bit more, I did speak with Italia Construction this morning, and as Derek said, they're currently not working. Many of their projects that were supposed to be have already started, are in communities where they're not allowing work. I mean, you probably have heard some communities are allowing certain types of construction to go on. Most communities are not at this point. So they're just basically waiting for, at this point, May 1st is probably the next date where we'll see what's going to happen with the order, the executive order, and if there's going to be any change or what the change may bring as far as restrictions. But he did say that they are ready to go, as soon as it's lifted. Now, when they say as soon as it's lifted, obviously they're not going to go out the next day. They've got to get their ducks in a row. They got to get their staff back together, their schedule in order, their equipment, make sure everything's working properly. So they're talking probably at least 10 days from the day they know that they are allowed to start work. And then with as far as restrictions, if there are some special things with the order, as far as maybe they have to do additional testing of their employees, maybe there's actually test kits available at that time. In order for them to get any of that type of equipment, of course, as the whole nation has gone through, we're not sure what the schedule will be if they had to do that. So, that could be another week or two, who knows? But basically, bottom line is, he said, if everything's in order and we're cleared to go and there's no real major restrictions, probably 10 days after that point of, with the order being lifted. And they have not had any issues up to this point with personnel, shortages or any of that. They see no problem. They're basically just waiting to get going, start work. They actually are supposed to be working next door to you guys in Royal Oak there. They're on one of the road projects and the sidewalk project, which I'm sure you heard about, that they pretty much have canceled for the most part. And that's happened to them in a few other communities as well. They're just kind of waiting to get going. So shouldn't be an issue with them starting up once everything is cleared.
Well, and just to cut off potential other questions about COVID, I mean, we all are we're all taking this day to day, day by day. We don't know at this point when things will happen or if they won't happen. I think it's fair that we will all have to revisit these items as they come up, short of trying to hypothetically come up with every scenario at this point, because the reality is we don't know. So I think we'll have to make sure that, depending on what the orders are from the governor, that's going to tell us a lot. And if things don't have to get pushed back, they have to get pushed back, and that's the reality. It's in the interest of safety and for everybody else. And I don't know that anybody here would have an issue with that. So thank you, Eddie, and we certainly appreciate that.
Sure.
Roland, you're here. Anything you'd like to add?
I am here, and there's not much I have to add. I think Eddie and Derek did a great job summarizing everything. I think my only kind of overarching comment is just I hope everybody's safe and healthy. It's just such a crazy unknown time. So our HRC's thoughts are with all of you and your families.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, Eddie, for being with us this evening. Are there any additional questions for either Director Schuler, Eddie, or Roland? Councilmember Hennon?
Yes. If they have to close down a section of the road to do some work, how long might residents expect that closure to be?
Want me to take that, Derek, or?
Go for it, Eddie.
Fine. So our intent is to never close down a road full width at a time if we can help it. We want to keep one-way traffic at all times. So that's our goal here, and that's what we're going to tell them to do. That's what we want to do. One side at a time, so people will still be able to pass at least on one side of the road. So that side of the road they're working on, of course, concrete cure time, could be about a week or so.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Blanchard.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was looking at the numbers, and they came in $478,000 below the estimate. Does this company have the resources, if that estimate's a little low, to complete the job?
No, Italia Construction, I guess just a brief history of them. Our company's worked with them for probably 25 years or so on, they've done an annual project for Bloomfield Township successfully for really almost that entire time. We worked with them on many other projects, and their pricing is usually pretty low, and it's not representative of their work. They do great quality work. They seem to move a little bit quicker than other contractors, but not in a hastily way. They do a good job. We've had good experience with them. So, again, like Derek said, I guess we were all wondering what these bids were going to come in at, but we were pleasantly surprised that we actually had a few bidders with pretty decent bids that are definitely under the estimate. So, but I definitely wouldn't take that as having an issue with our quality of work.
Thanks, Eddie. Appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Councilmember Baker.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor, and thanks to you all again for bringing this project to us as well. It's very satisfying to see the millage vote results coming into focus here as we move forward with this. On the last item, I asked about communication outreach to the affected parties, and so especially given this item's dynamic range throughout the city, is there a general strategy, if not a specific communication plan, as to how we will let folks know with some amount of forewarning that will be in their particular intersection or down their street on a given time? How, if not specifically, how strategically could you share that you guys are thinking about the communication to the affected parties?
Well, go ahead, Eddie.
Okay. You first.
Councilman, that is something that we want to work on as far as the specific communication plan. This certainly has its challenges because we're dealing with so many sites. Obviously, they're not going to go through and do all of those sites at one time. So I think it's really going to depend on how the contractor wants to break this up and how we want them to go through the city. We have talked about producing some, I guess, sandwich boards, for lack of a better word, to start putting out at locations where we can buy several of these and give folks a heads up that we're moving into their neighborhood. Obviously, if we're impacting a driveway and specifically access to a driveway, no question there will be some direct contact with property owners in those instances because, getting cars out of the driveway and that sort of thing is important. But Councilman, I do envision us working with Tori and the contractor to develop some sort of plan of how we can reach out to folks. Obviously, we're going to use the infrastructure project tab on the city website under Public Works. There's no question we'll continue to use that, but trying to figure out ways to make that communication a little more direct to folks in the area is certainly a goal of ours.
Excellent, thank you. It does sound like you have some good strategies in mind as you and the team approach the specifics. And I do like the idea of those sandwich boards or some kind of yard sign, if you will, that you could scatter throughout the city as appropriate, with a little bit of information on it, maybe a QR code that somebody with a cell phone could zap, and it takes them right to the page that you mentioned a moment ago. That kind of thing I think would be cost effective and also very effective for our residents and passersby. So thank you for your consideration with that.
Additional questions? All right, seeing none again, thank you, Eddie and Roland, for being here to answer these questions. And seeing no additional questions or comments, Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on M1920?
Price,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Blanchard,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennon,
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. Item 1920 has been approved. We now move on to item number 4, please, Ms. Mitchell.
Motion number M2020, matter of declaring intention to vacate portion of public alley and scheduling a public hearing relative to portion of alley located west of Woodward Avenue and north of Eaton Road.
Is there a motion to approve M2020?
So
Motion
moved.
to approve.
Motion made by Councilmember Gavin with support from Councilmember Price. Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the next step in the process that was agreed upon when the City Council approved the restated collaborative agreement between Lugo Properties, the Vincetta Garage Restaurant Group, and the city itself. As the motion stated, this is merely declaring the intention to vacate an alleyway and setting the public hearing. That the actual decision is not on the agenda for this evening. The alleyway in question is the northernmost part of the alleyway just north of Eaton. It actually runs into a brick wall, and there's a steep grade change before you get to the Charter One Bank there to the north of it. And so this would be basically in addition to the reconsolidation of properties for Lugo Properties. So the owner of the T-Mobile Bank there and the lot immediately to the south. Mr. Sterin has put together an exhaustive list of pieces of evidence and exhibits, as well as a very well detailed memo sort of declaring what this process entails. And I'm sure he can speak to that. Again, the packet does include a number of exhibits, including a map of the alleyway in question.
Short of the exhaustive list, Mr. Sterin, anything else you'd like to add to this item?
Good evening, Council. City Manager explained, really summarized what's before you fairly well. This is a follow-up item, actually a follow-through item. Council recalls the parking collaboration agreement that was entered into with the city and the ownership of the Vincetta Garage Restaurant and the T-Mobile store owners. And as a result of the approval and entry into that agreement, each party had a number of things they had to do, some of which have already occurred. For instance, as the city manager mentioned, the 3 lots there on the north side of Eaton, west of Woodward, have been joined and reconfigured and resplit such that the Vincetta Garage ownership now owns all the frontage along Eaton Street. So pretty much figure the front half of those first 3 lots. And the owner of the T-Mobile owns the back half. The vacation of this easement, of this alley, which currently bisects the property that the T-Mobile owners own on either side of the alley, by vacating it, that alley will now become a part of the T-Mobile owners' property. So they'll have one undivided property. Won't be a perfect rectangular shape, but it will be more usable to them. And that was really one of the main benefits to them, one of the main advantages for entering into this. So as I said, this is a follow-through item under our City Code of Ordinances. Vacating a public street or an alley is a 2-step process. This is step 1 tonight, whereby the council would determine the advisability of proceeding further with the vacation and abandonment of the alley, and there is a proposed resolution for your consideration in your meeting materials. And the next step would be the holding of a public hearing 30 days out, which conveniently falls on the evening of your second meeting, your second meeting in May, where we would hold the public hearing, and at that time, council would make its final decision as to the vacation of the alley. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sterin. Again, today we are looking at the matter of declaring intentions to vacate and scheduling the hearing. As was mentioned, this is a part of the resolution that we entered into and with Lugo Properties here as part of the collaborative agreement. Are there additional questions or comments for Mr. Sterin? Councilmember Gavin?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Sterin, quick question. On page 2, number 3, letter A, it talks about the city approval for the land division combination and that having occurred. Is there any language that's required for Oakland County Equalization as assessor for the city to have to do any approval as well, or are we just covered as is?
No, the land division reconfiguration already has been approved. Yes, the city packages it up and basically certifies to the county equalization department that all city ordinance requirements are met. That's already been processed and approved. by the county. I'm going to say about a month and a half ago. Actually, this probably would have come to you about a month and a half ago, but for the onset of the current COVID-19 crisis. It's been bumped a couple of times from your agendas, but it was determined, well, we've got to move ahead with this sooner or later. So that's why it's before you this evening.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any additional questions or comments for our attorney? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Baumgarten and Mr. Stern, for providing the additional context. I think this is something that council certainly is familiar with, and we know was coming as part of this process. So it's nice to be able to take that step this evening. Seeing no additional questions on that, Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on M 2020?
Baker,
Yes.
Blanchard,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennon,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. We now move on to item number 5. Ms. Mitchell, would you please read that agenda item?
Motion number M 2120, matter of approving a modification to the Master Plan Steering Committee roster to add Sue McAlpine and Joseph Bardis.
Is there a motion to approve M 2120?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, I have no idea what happened there, but Mayor Pro Tem Dean, the yellow light was on you. You made the motion, and Councilmember Hennon, I believe you supported that motion. Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our Master Plan Steering Committee has been in full swing up until the recent lockdown orders, but are going to be reconvening soon to continue their diligent work on seeing the master plan process through. We do come before you with 2 alterations to that body. The first one would be a replacement of the representative from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Mr. Paul Evans, who does a phenomenal job as chair, is unable to make these particular meetings just based on the way the schedule fell with the majority of the group. And so he's nominated, and Sue McAlpine has accepted consideration to fill the ZBA spot on this body. Ms. McAlpine does a phenomenal job for us on the ZBA. Her application's included in the packet here. The other one would be replacement of the student position. We'd advertised with the school district for quite a while, looking for a student to fulfill this role. Unfortunately, we didn't get a response to them even while school was in session. Now that school year has been canceled for the rest of the academic year, at least, we're seeking to go a different option. We went back to the application pool that we'd received initially and found that Mr. Bardis is extremely qualified. He has great insights into traffic management, and you'll see his impressive resume is included in there as well. This group, of course, works most closely with Community Development Director Aaron Schluto, who authored the memo included in your packet and is here with you this evening.
Questions for Director Schluto or Mr. Baumgarten? Councilmember Gavin?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Just a quick comment. So I certainly don't see anything wrong with my voting on it, but Joe Bardis is actually my neighbor, so I'd leave it to the discretion of council, but I certainly don't see anything wrong.
Does anybody have significant objection to Councilmember Gavin voting on this item? Sorry, Ross, looks like you're gonna have to go on record. Might be awkward at the next neighborhood gathering. Any additional questions for either Aaron or Matt? Seeing none, I want to thank both Joe and Sue for volunteering to step up and to have a seat on the Master Plan Steering Committee. Is obviously an incredible important project is what we're doing right now, and being able to have a full board is important to allow us to do the outreach and to get the opinions and feedback that are required in order to have a sound master plan. Seeing no additional hands going up, Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on M2120?
Blanchard,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hennon,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Yes.
Turbrack.
M2120 has passed. We now move on to agenda item number 6, please.
Resolution number R720, matter of authorizing publication of a notice of public hearing to be held on May 18, 2020, regarding the proposed operating budget for the city of Berkeley, Michigan for fiscal year 2020-2021.
Is there a motion to approve R0720?
Motion to approve.
Support.
Motion to approve by Councilmember Baker with support from Councilmember Blanchard. Mr. Baumgarten, before you get into this certainly is something else that we are having to take day to day to figure out what the process is going to look like for our budget hearings. And a lot of that is certainly dependent, and Mr. Stern, you may chime in here, on the orders that continue to come from the governor. And as those things change, we may have to make some modifications to our process, but our intent is to certainly hold our public hearings as normal. We will hold them whether they're virtual. I would assume at this point, probably virtual is the most likely scenario. Even if the order changes, it may still, just for safety's sake, be something that we at least consider, but we will certainly plan to hold these budget hearings just as we have every year prior. It just may not be in the second floor of the public safety building. Sorry, Mr. Baumgarten, anything else to add?
No, Mr. Mayor, just that anybody who is interested in the lead up to this public hearing can find an itemized list of the millages that the city assesses and what those millage values would be. Anybody who's interested, if they kind of want to know what that tax implication would look like for them, they would merely find the taxable value of their home and then apply these numbers to the and for every $1,000 would be the dollar amounts indicated there in the form of a millage. So you'll see not only the millage rates, but also on aggregate, the amount of revenues that those would potentially raise for the city to, of course, reinvest back into the community at large. So that information is all available to be posted at City Hall here, and then also available on our websites for anybody who is interested in finding that information out. So it is made readily available.
Mr. Stern, do you have anything to add in terms of what the process might look like? Okay. Oh, there you go.
Was that question directed to me?
It was. Sorry.
Oh, I had trouble hearing you, Mayor. At this point, it's hard to know. We do know right now that the governor's order allowing this type of meeting, remote participation, electronic meeting, is due to expire on May 12th. Whether that will be extended or not, your guess is as good as mine. My personal expectation is that although the governor may start relaxing some things come May 1, I don't expect her to completely pull the plug on everything. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is some extension of our ability to meet remotely. But at this point in time, it would have to be an in-person, traditional, conventional city meeting until we hear otherwise from the governor's office.
Right. Thank you. Additional questions on budget hearings? Councilmember Hennon?
Yes, related to the scheduling of it and having it in person, we're passing a resolution that says it will meet in City Hall if the order should come down that we can meet virtually, are we going to have to renotice this to be able to hold that meeting?
I should probably field that one. We would have to put out some type of notice. I'm not necessarily saying that we would have to completely scrap the meeting, although we could, but not that we'd have to completely scrap the meeting, but we would do what we could to get additional notice out, certainly postings on the City Hall door, using the internet, whatever other means we have to get that word out. In addition, any extension of the order by the governor will certainly be public knowledge that will be picked up by the news media as well, just as it has been up till now.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Dean.
Thank you, Your Honor. Could the, this is directed to Mr. Sterin, could the notice of the meeting be worded such that it would cover whether we met virtually or in person? Would that make sense? And then direct people, depending what happens moving forward, direct people as to what that meeting really is going to be, or does it have to be specific to?
I will consider that issue further and consult with the city manager and Ms. Mitchell. Actually, Council Member Hennon and I had a dialogue about that, an electronic dialogue, mind you, about that just within the last couple of days. My concern about putting anything in there about it possibly being an electronic meeting, I was concerned about that, maybe making things confusing and potentially rendering the notice technically invalid under the Open Meetings Act. But in thinking about it further, and again, I'll talk to Ms. Mitchell about it, there may be something we can do, even if it's simply a footnote or something like that that would be visible, but just noting that there is a possibility, depending on what the then current state of the public state of emergency is, that the meeting could be held virtually, and that there would be further notice issued if that was the case. So again, I'll work with the city clerk on that point, and if there's something we can do, then we will.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no additional hands moving, I see mostly heads nodding. Ms. Mitchell, I do not see anybody else. Again, as we've talked about with a few items today, we're kind of taking things day by day, doing everything that we can, abiding by the spirit of the law, but knowing that things may change and we may have to alter our course on some of these items. But we need to continue moving forward in the right direction, and then as changes come, we will certainly adapt to them. And all great questions from my colleagues as well. So thank you for that. Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll on R0720?
Dean?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
Hennon?
Yes.
Price?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Blanchard?
Yes.
Turbrack?
Yes. We now move on to our second public comments. Again, this is for items that are not included on tonight's agenda. The same rules apply as before. If your concern needs to be addressed by a member of city staff, please email the clerk's office at clerk@berkeleymich.net or call the clerk's office at 248-658-3310. If you would like to comment and you're part of the Zoom meeting, please raise your hand. If you would like to comment and you are watching, the phone number again is 1-312-626-6799. Again, 312-626-6799. When you speak, please state your name and city of residence.
Mr. Mayor, I believe we do have a comment. Roland, do you have something to say?
Oh, no, I do not.
Oh, I saw you raise your hand, so I wanted to make sure.
I also saw him raise his hand. I was very curious. Okay.
Thank you, Tori.
Again, we'll give a few seconds for anybody else who is trying to dial in. Again, that number 312-626-6799. Last chance, Roland. Are you sure? Okay. Tori, anybody else?
I am seeing none.
Okay. Thank you. We will close the second public comments portion and we will move on to communications. Ms. Mitchell, I apologize for this, but I'm just going to go in the order in my head, and we are going to start with Councilmember Gavin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Keep it brief. So we do have a couple of committees that I'm liaison to that are going to be meeting virtually here coming up. So we've got the Master Plan Steering Committee tomorrow, April 21st at 7 p.m. And then the Planning Commission will meet virtually at 7 p.m. next Tuesday, the 28th. If you go to berkeleymish.org/calendar, there are links that you can join via Zoom, or you can have the number there to call in as well. So myself, along with a couple other council members, Councilmember Hennon, Councilmember Baker, and then Councilmember Price attended a session as well at the MML's weekend education, which seems like a lifetime ago, actually, on advanced budgeting. So there's a lot of great information that came out of that, and certainly share more in the future. So in the meantime, stay safe, listen to the experts and be healthy, and hope everyone take care of themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hennon?
Yes, and now let me find my notes that just disappeared. Okay, the tree board, they don't have a meeting scheduled coming up, but the work on the proposed tree inventory has halted for the year, due mostly to the problems with safely conducting training, but also because of the budget uncertainty around that. The ZBA will be meeting on Monday, May 11th at 7 p.m. They'll hear at least one and possibly more cases, and that meeting will be held online. And just finally, I wanted to thank all of Berkeley, our residents, our businesses. They've all done an incredible job stepping up, doing the right things, and really selflessly helping others in their time of need. It's really great to be living in such a caring community with so many caring people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Dean.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. In my last communication, I asked that we recognize healthcare workers and first responders and their families, and recognizing the sacrifices that they're making. Since then, I read an opinion piece in the Detroit Free Press by our Oakland County Treasurer, Andy Meisner. And he reminds us that we need to add supportive substance to our good wishes. And while I believe that all supportive, that the thoughts and prayers and positive energy that we're sending out to people matters, that adding that substance is a critical piece. So to that end, the Wayne State University School of Social Work, the College of Nursing, and some other departments have established the Healthcare Provider Support Hotline. Licensed social workers, mental health nurse practitioners, and psychologists volunteer their time and expertise to the hotline, providing free, confidential, and anonymous counseling. The number for the Healthcare Worker Support Hotline is 888-910-1636. That hotline is open from Monday through Saturday from 5 a.m. until 9 p.m. And that hotline is truly just for first responders. In addition, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services launched a new statewide warm line for Michiganders living with persistent mental health conditions. The warm line will connect individuals with certified peer support specialists who have lived experiences of behavioral health issues, trauma, and personal crisis, and they're trained to support and empower callers. If you'd like to connect with a peer support specialist, call 888-733-7753 between the hours of 10 a.m. and 2 a.m. 7 days a week. I have an update for you on the wellness checks that we're doing here in the city. Thank you, Councilmember Gavin, for joining us and making those calls. A big thank you to Matt Church, Teresa McCarlton, library staff, and Parks and Recreation staff for your continued commitment to doing these wellness checks. As of today, this is pretty exciting, we've made it through the list in its entirety, and that's 1,000 phone calls. I'm grateful to be part of this process as well. It warms my heart when I talk with residents and they tell me how great their families are and how great their neighbors are. In fact, I had one resident say, I have stellar neighbors. And it doesn't surprise me because that's Berkeley, right? We care. And it makes me proud to live in our community where people are checking on each other. We're checking on our neighbors. We're checking on people that maybe we haven't even really talked with much before, but we're stepping up and we're doing that because it's the right thing to do. And it's beautiful, truly, to see the community coming together collectively, putting any differences aside, because we are all in this together. Could be a different boat, but we are all in it together. So if you're not on the list for wellness checks and you want to be, please call me, Bridget Dean, at 248-930-0544 or Teresa McCarlton at 248-672-0295, and we will happily add you to that list. And remember, this too shall pass, and we are Berkeley strong. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Baker.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor, and excellent words of gratitude and sympathy and support from my colleagues here. Just adding to the choir, our two of the committees to which I liaise have not had an opportunity to meet online yet, the Technology Committee and Historical Committee. But the DDA was able to meet last week's Wednesday online, and they conducted their business and were able to approve their draft budget as part of the overall city's budget process. And I too would like to extend my thanks and gratitude to our Public Works and City Hall staff who are working so hard to keep everything going, to public safety and the EMT and the first responders for working so hard to keep us all safe, and to the healthcare workers and those on the front line that put themselves in harm's way to help all of us in our greatest moments of need. It was Laurel Hamilton who once said, confidence is a fine trait, overconfidence is not. And as you may have noticed, the weather outside is becoming more and more delightful. It was a beautiful sunny day again today. Those of us that are able to work at home and otherwise are staying at home are very much eager to get out and walk around and explore this great city and wave to those terrific neighbors from across the street and things like that. And it's amazing to see so many folks, especially in our downtown corridor, walking around and enjoying that. But I've noticed over the last few days into last week and especially today, the times that I was out, very few people were wearing protective masks, face masks of sorts. Now, to be clear, that's not mandatory. It is not required to wear these. Some other states and cities have passed such requirements. We are not there. However, our state's top medical officials strongly recommend that we continue to protect ourselves and to protect others. So please be confident, but do not be overconfident. Just because you don't feel symptoms doesn't mean you're not a carrier. If you've been tested yesterday, you still might get it tomorrow. And especially those of us that are in a leadership position, as we're out walking around, it's really important to set a positive example for doing everything that we can to take care of ourselves and our families and our neighbors and those around us. The job of staying home and wearing these kinds of things is actually part of the response, right? By doing our parts to keep ourselves healthy and keep our families healthy and our neighbors healthy, that is helping to slow this down and squish the curve, so to speak. So please take care of yourselves, especially us in the leadership positions, to continue to demonstrate the role models that we can be. And one last quick reminder again, that we're not stuck at home. Rather, we're safe at home. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Price.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. So my boards, unfortunately, have not been able to meet yet, but I wanted to thank the library director, Matt Church, for keeping the library board and myself updated with all of the resources that the library and the staff are offering during this time. I wanted to share those through my communications this evening. So one of the great resources at the library is anyone can drive into the parking lot, you know, keep those windows rolled up, keep your distance, but you can have free internet. The routers, you'll have to correct you with the technical terms, but they've been repositioned. Oh, Tori gave me the thumbs up. Okay, routers, good. But repositioned to get that full coverage into the parking lot. So if you, if that helps you and your family, go to the library parking lot, use the internet. It's available to all. The library staff is also organizing virtual story times and craft ideas through Facebook. If you check the library's Facebook page, you'll find those there. Live scheduled times. Also a Share Your Talents initiative, Berkeley residents sharing, making music, sharing all kinds of talents and publishing videos onto Facebook. There's also a digital book club that's available to anyone to participate with the books available through our digital collections that the library subscribes to, and then regular questions, prompts, meeting times, all digitally done with the library through Facebook as well. He wanted me to remind everyone of those digital collections, ebooks, audiobooks, music, movies, magazines, all available to anybody with a Berkeley card, library card. Go to the library's website to access those. And if you are having trouble, if your library card has expired, or maybe you haven't had a need for one yet and now you do, feel free to call the library's main line and leave a message, and the director, Matt Church, will get back to you. Or you can email him at mchurch@berkeleymish.net. If you need any help getting a library card, he can issue that to you digitally, get you the information you need to connect to all these great resources. So thank you again very much to the library director, Matt Church, and his staff for offering so much to the residents during this difficult time. I also, like last week, have another quote for my communications this evening. This week, it's Atul Gawande from his book, Being Mortal, Medicine and What Matters in the End. Dr. Gawande says, you may not control life circumstances, but getting to be the author of your life means getting to control what you do with them. And again, this is some of his commentary on end of life, which is what I would like to address briefly tonight. During my last communications, I urged everyone to assume that they have been exposed to COVID, assume that they are carriers, and distance themselves accordingly. To know that staying home is a meaningful and life-saving act. And this evening, in addition to staying home, I'd like to urge everyone, to challenge everyone to make time within the next few days, or at least the next week, to have conversations with your loved ones about the interventions that you would choose for yourself if you were to be hospitalized with COVID-19. As we know, this virus presents some unique challenges, such as required bans on hospital visitors, as well as extremely low success rates for CPR after intubation and ventilation. So call your primary care provider, discuss how possible COVID interventions in the hospital apply to your specific situation, make those incredibly personal decisions about which interventions you would want, and share those decisions with your loved ones. Knowing what you want lifts a burden on whoever will need to make those decisions for you if you're not able to communicate. The coronavirus may rob us of the ability to determine how soon we die, but we can still control the state we are in at that time, as well as the legacy that we leave behind. So there's my challenge for you. Find out what you need to find out to make those difficult decisions, share them with your loved ones, And I promise a burden maybe that you didn't even realize you've been carrying will be lifted. Thank you.
Member Blanchard.
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple of things tonight. I just want to update you on the Chamber of Commerce, who supports the Art Bash every year in June, which moved it to May because of the road construction, has now canceled that. What they are doing is they're making an offer to the artists that might have come to participate in the Street Art Fest in July. So we may have an expansion of the Street Art Fest. We may have some of our artists that would have been in the Art Bash there for that event. I'd like to thank our Public Safety Department. Our guys there are doing a great job. Chief Matt Kane has got them well organized. They're being temperature checked whenever they come in the building. They're minimizing the number of people that are coming into contact with any potential people that are sick, whether they're COVID or not, to make sure that we minimize the number of people that could possibly be exposed. So they're doing a wonderful job. Also like to thank the residents for supporting our local restaurants. They're suffering now because of lack of business, so encouraging everybody to get out and eat in our local businesses so that we have those local businesses when this is over with. And I guess one of the last things is, as most of you know, we've got 58 positive cases and 5 of our residents deceased. And so my thoughts and prayers go out to those people, the relatives of those people, and say, we hope there are no more. We hope this is the end of it. So please be safe, stay safe. And the last thing is we are working now with Matt Baumgartens and Mark on the grant program so that if there's money available for the reimbursement of some of our expenses, when the time comes, we will be prepared for that. So we're keeping that in our focus right now. So thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm appreciative to hear council recognize the hard work of staff. We do have a talented group of public servants who truly do embody that term. They have done their best to be everywhere and provide every service you would normally find in the community, considering the circumstances. And it's fantastic to hear council speak so highly of them. Thank you so much for that. Like many of the council members have said, the community is also has stepped up in a big way, and it's great to see so many people support their neighbors and healthcare workers and frontline workers in so many fantastic ways. Local businesses are struggling, but many of them in the great entrepreneurial spirit have found a way to change gears and be there for Berkeley residents as well. And the more we can support them, the longer each of them will continue to be around. So I'd like to urge Berkeley residents to keep on doing that in any way they can. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not too much to say other than we continue to assist as best we can with the seemingly daily new and unique issues that come up with legal questions and nuances related to the current health crisis that we're going through, and how do we conduct government, local government, and provide local services under these circumstances. I'm hoping we only have a couple more weeks left of having to field those kinds of questions, although realistically it's probably going to be a long time before we get back to what we used to think was normal. I guess it'll probably be a new normal, but we continue to do that. Everything else seems to be under control. I'm pleased to say that everybody at my end is doing well, and hopefully at yours as well. And I have nothing further to report this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Sterin. I too want to echo the thoughts that we've heard already, thanking our residents, the departments of the city staff, for all of their efforts to not only stop the spread, but also to support those in need in our community. And that certainly extends to the entire business community. They have been, as was just mentioned, been very creative in ideas and in how to make sure that they can still serve the residents. And I know the residents have been doing their best to continue to patronize those businesses. And while we're starting to see some positive impacts from social distancing, it doesn't mean that we're done. It means that we need to continue to all do our part in keeping each other as safe as we possibly can. And on the subject of safety, I do want to take a moment to shout out our public safety officers, but not just for their work as first responders, but also for taking care of their own station. Our officers, staff, and contractors have done an incredible job renovating our dispatch department ahead of time, ahead of schedule, and under budget. It truly took the whole village, but I do know that Lieutenant Jordan Kobernick was leading much of that charge and was a big reason for it nearing completion as expediently and as economically efficiently as possible. This was a project that started before the virus hit, but there's little that can be deemed more essential than our dispatch department. So I do want to thank Lieutenant Kobernick and all of the officers and staff and contractors that put in their own time and effort to make this a reality. And I know most of us probably have not been able to see it yet, but I promise you when we are able to go in and see it, you will really understand the amount of effort and really just sweat that they put into making that a much more functional space. And it's incredible the work that they've done. So they certainly deserve kudos to that on top of, dealing with the virus. So it was a nice outlet, I think, for our officers to focus on something else. And they did just a tremendous job. And with our current reality, leaving digital is our primary means to communicate with residents. And it came up already a few times during this meeting. And I realize it's been a little while since I went on a Facebook tirade. So now seems like the appropriate time to fire a warning shot across a few bows. In order for us to continue the master planning process, unfortunately, Facebook is being used to interact with residents because it's probably the most efficient way to meet people where they are right now. Personal feelings aside, no issues with that. We need to leverage every avenue possible to engage with our residents. Where I do have a problem, and stop me if you've heard this, no, don't stop me, you've all heard it before, is when folks engaging in those questions decide that it's time to personally attack the person who disagrees with them, who has a differing point of view. Let me be clear. If that happens, I don't care if you're on the steering committee, if you're a resident of the city, or just somebody who likes to stir the pot in the city of Berkeley, your comments will be removed and you will be muted moving forward. No questions asked. We don't have the time or the patience to deal with Facebook squabbles, generally between adults, or somebody calling somebody else a name when we're dealing with a global pandemic. That group is being moderated. We're not going to play games. And please, please be civil. We want to hear from everybody. And just because somebody has a different point of view doesn't necessarily make them wrong or right. It's just their perspective. And we need to respect that because we need to have as many perspectives and opinions throughout this master planning process now. And as we talked about with the recreational master plan, we are going to have to conduct some of our discussion electronically as well. So please share your opinions, but please be civil. Thank you for your cooperation in that manner. With that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
Support.
Motion made by Mayor Pro Tem Dean with support from Council Member Price. Ms. Mitchell, would you please call the roll?
Hennen,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Blanchard,
Yes.
Dean,
Yes.
Gavin,
Yes.
Turbrack.
Yes. The April 20th, 2020 meeting of the 38th Council has been adjourned. Thank you.